Hey everyone, I'm Alex and I'm a design recruiter based in New York. Today I'm really happy to be joined by Alexandre Sitbon, SVP of Product at Coast. For those that don't know, Coast is one of the most interesting fintech companies in the country right now. They're rebuilding payments for the businesses that keep America moving. Fleets, contractors, blue-collar field teams. These are the people who've been ignored by software for the last decade, served by a fuel card duopoly that's been extracting fees from them for years. Coast is the first venture-backed company building software specifically for this customer. They just raised a $40 million Series B led by ICONIQ Growth, bringing total equity to nearly $100 million, and revenue has grown more than 10x in the last 18 months. In this episode, we get into Alexandre's path from leading product and design at Spring Health to now at Coast. We also learn how Coast designs for a customer that most software companies overlook, how their team is structured, and what he looks for from product managers and designers as they scale. This episode is a great listen for anyone in product or design thinking about their next move. And if you're interested, you can reach out to me on alex@asterhq.com. Where I wanted to start was actually a little bit more about your background.
Yes.
When we first connected and started working together, you kind of described this shift from being in healthcare and in that world for a long time, and then being interested in moving into something new. And obviously that big switch has been into fintech at Coast. How did that come about, and what pulled you from working in health tech for so long into fintech?
So I joined Spring. Spring Health is a mental health care tech company. And I joined Spring about 6 years ago. Initially came in to help build from scratch, the product management and the product design team. And I think when I started at Spring, we had about like a few 100,000 patients. And now I think on the platform I have the numbers from last year, so they may be outdated. But by the time I left, I think we were close like to 25 million people on the platform. And so having had the privilege to work at Spring and achieve that level of scale and outcomes, if you will, and all the good things that come along with it, and adding on top of that all of the years in healthcare tech, my feeling was that I don't think I necessarily have the ambition to top that, and not necessarily did I think that I would be able to actually top that. Except maybe working at a company like Apple, who's doing a lot of investment in healthcare. And so I wanted to do something very different. And I didn't really have any preconceived notions about, where I wanted to work. I think one thing that was very top of mind is being able to work on a product that people use, on a tool that people use every day, right? You can think of the Figmas and the Notions and the Linears of the world, right? But perhaps more early stage. And Coast is a little bit of that in some ways. And so it wasn't so much about fintech as it was about working on something that people use every day and that actually is having impact in their professional lives to some extent. That's what drew me to Coast. And some other factors. There's many other factors that I'm happy to go into, but that was one of the first reasons. Yeah.
Is this something that felt familiar to you? Obviously you were in Spring Health, which was focused on mental health, which was historically an environment that was not that well catered for. And obviously there's been a lot of innovation now in mental health and a lot of conversation positively about mental health. But this is an also similar space and similar vertical. There hasn't been any fintechs really that have focused on truck drivers and plumbers and HVAC drivers,
100%.
installers. So it's kind of this new terrain. Did you feel there was a connecting thread somewhere between these two kind of seemingly different areas, but potentially connected?
So Spring, when by the time, so Adam and April met at who are the co-founders of Spring, met at Yale, and April reached out to Adam because he wrote a great paper about computational psychiatry. So basically, I'm oversimplifying, using data to drive mental health care treatments, right? And before that, it used to be a guessing game of trying to find the right provider and then trying them out, and then it doesn't work, and finding someone else that eventually starts working, but then you drop off your treatment and then you go back on again. And so Spring Health is solving all of this. So being able to provide personalized medicine that actually has impact on someone's mental health to get better, right? And before Spring Health got into the market, what most employees were using were either the behavioral options as part of their medical plans or working with legacy incumbent EAPs, it's employee assistance programs. In both cases, like the actual quality of care, it's pretty bad. It's pretty poor. And what's interesting with Coast, the parallel with Coast is the same thing. So when Daniel started looking at the fleet payment space, you realize that there are a few incumbents that are doing very, very well. We're talking about like 9-figure businesses. So some of those companies are actually public. Who are doing very well with very high margins, but are providing their customers like with a really poor like user experience overall. Because when you own a fleet, the car like to pay for fuel is the thing that works. So it's like you're not gonna change it, right? So you don't realize how bad you have it until someone comes along and gives you basically like a glass of water in the desert. And that's exactly what Daniel has done, which is again like very similar to what's happened at Spring. So we're making like incumbents like very uncomfortable, I want to say, and I also feel like fairly confident to say that like at least when it comes to the fuel payment card, we have like the best one in the market. And the rest of the product lineup, I think, is gonna get there like very, very soon. We're getting like very good traction with customers on the rest of the lineup that I can go into. And that's because like we've learned so much, working with them side by side on building the fuel card. So the answer to your question is in a short answer is yes, yeah.
Since we're on the topic, I mean, how do you describe Coast to people and what you're building? And then I guess in addition, like how do you describe the actual person that you're building this product for, who sits at the end of the product?
Yeah. So what we're doing at Coast is building the financial platform that companies running the physical economy are going to be able to leverage to build great businesses overall. So what I mean by physical economy, we're talking about companies that are in the construction business, for instance, or companies that are providing, residential services such as, HVAC servicing, plumbers, electricians, pest controls and whatnot. We're also servicing like some schools and some police forces and whatnot. And so all of those businesses that have, fleets of vehicles, like we're helping them, making sure that they have like full control over their finances. And are using their money like in the most efficient way possible, and of course, like that's saving them like a lot of money, at the same time. And the way Coast started was by building a fuel card. So as I said, like the fuel card in of itself is nothing new; it's been in existence for a while. But the user experience actually with it is very opinionated, and I can go into that if you want. Which it's funny because customers are a little bit surprised by it at the beginning, but when they really start using it and start understanding really the philosophy behind it, they get hooked. We actually have almost like no churn, and the churn that we have is, sometimes business go out of business. Especially when you serve micro fleets of like 3 to 10 vehicles. It's tough out there, right, to be a successful business. And so those churn, but for the most part, like people get hooked, and that's really exciting to see. And I was at a few conferences over the last few weeks, and you have customers, stopping by the booth and telling us how much they love the product. It's very heartwarming, and it's the same kind of feedback that I used to get at Spring Health. As far as the actual like users, and that's what's make like the Coast, I think, very interesting for product designers and product managers, and of course like engineers, is that on one hand we have drivers, so those are going to be people driving trucks as part of the fleet. They need to buy fuel, they need to buy equipment for a job, whatever that may be. And then on the other end, we're going to have what I'm going to call like people in the back office. So that could be, for smaller fleet, that could be the actual owner. For larger fleets, that could be fleet operators, account payable clerks, that could be someone on the finance team, on the accounting team, a CFO, and so on and so forth, right? And so what's fascinating is that like we are in this position where every time we ship something, we got to make sure this is like simple enough to use for the driver in the field. And I'm not being like negative about drivers, just that they have a ton going on, and like learning how to use a mobile app is the least of their problems, But again, like very simple enough for those drivers, and then like powerful enough such that people in the home office who run complex workflows with their accounting systems and any other reporting systems get everything they need out of Coast. And so we're always oscillating between the two, which personally I find like fascinating and intellectually stimulating, I would say.
Yeah, it's an interesting industry as well. Like the more I looked into it, I was like, wow, this is like a really fragmented industry. Like when you think about fleets and you think about trucking and freight, you think, okay, it's probably going to be maybe a few companies that own this entire market, but it's mostly small businesses by like a significant margin. I think I was reading like 99% of the market is like less than 100 trucks or something crazy like that. But it's also a market that is massively impacted by a lot of what's been happening, geopolitically, I guess, and politically over the last couple of years. Like tariffs have probably had a huge impact. Even around things like steel and aluminum, I was reading, is having a huge impact on the industry in terms of like replacement parts. So like running a business for these small businesses is like become very expensive, as well as obviously fuel prices, which everyone knows is just skyrocketing at the moment. And then kind of similarly, the fuel card market is essentially like a duopoly within like two major incumbents. So it's a really interesting space that I don't think anyone ever really thinks about that much. I guess when you think about the industry and the market, and you think about like the version of Coast kind of 5 years out, what has like the team's background been able to do in terms of innovation and product development and growth that some of these other incumbents just couldn't do themselves?
So perhaps the first thing I would say is when it comes to Daniel, so he used to run a company called Bread. If if the audience knows about Affirm and Klarna and whatnot, this is the same kind of product, right? So it's like buy now, pay later kind of product. And that was a consumer product. And so he's built that business very successfully. He had a very successful exit. And I think like what he learned from that experience is what it takes to actually like shipping like consumer grade experiences and bringing that over to Coast. And I remember when I took my very first product job, or rather like the first time I started leading design, I just had this feeling that like, I'm using those apps every day on my smartphone. Like I don't want the tools that I'm building like to be any less usable than those products. And so I've always pushed for having like a consumer grade level of output, from my teams. And I think like Daniel has made this like core like to Coast. The reason that like we've been able to win so much business over incumbents is because their user experiences hasn't changed and they're very stale. And we do a much better job at expressing, in our products, the level of empathy we have for our customers and for our users of the product. So I think that's like one main thing that's like very differentiated, for Coast. The second thing is that, again, as I said, like those incumbents are super successful. They are 9-figure businesses. And I think that like Coast could also become a 9-figure business if we just focused on fuel payment. But we've always seen it as a wedge product into the greater financial lives of our customers, if you will, right? So, and again, like making the product so good that we actually have the right to help our customers with the rest of their spending, so corporate spending, everything that is non-fuel related, right? And we've done that very successfully. So out of the fuel card, we've built a corporate card, an expense management product, a bill pay product. There is a couple new products coming out this year. And I think that is going to make us very, very sticky in the long term. Again, like not only because we've earned the right to serve our customers in those other areas of their financial lives, but also because we understand deeply the workflows associated with how they operate. So in some ways, what we learned through fuel is coming up with a product that actually resonates with everyone. And then out of that, we've almost, what we've done is really learn all of those workflows that have enabled us to really like customize the product or adapt the product, or I think the better word would be ensure the product is flexible enough such that we can actually meet the need of those different customers in those different industries who have very different workflows, and still have a product that is highly usable and not something that didn't turn into a monster, which can happen like very easily when you're trying to build for everyone.
Yeah.
And so I think those are like the main things that come to mind. I'm not sure if I answer your question.
No,
But
no,
yeah,
it does.
yeah,
It does. Yeah. I mean, it definitely answers it. I mean, it sounds like from what you're saying, the fuel card is the wedge, and then you're building essentially a platform.
yeah,
It's a platform for transportation, so it can extend into
absolutely.
tons of different areas. That's a massive TAM that kind of extends into a lot of
It is.
spaces.
It is. Yeah. I think like if you think about legacy corporate cars like Amex, for instance, like they would never do that. It's not really like in their interest, right? So like as a business owner of a fleet, like you're not gonna get that out of Amex. And then you have other like more modern, fintech players in the space that are not whose blue collar workers type of businesses or trades businesses. They're not really like their target market right now. I hope never actually, and and who don't have really like a solution to the complex workflows that our customers have when it comes to the fleet businesses and so on and so forth, right? But in terms of overall success, I would say that like in building a platform, if you want, like the model that resonates really with us is a company like Toast, for instance. Just started again with one product and then expanded from there and very successfully. Another company which sometimes we come across also, Ramp, I think is a great example of being very successful and executing really, really well in a way that being very close, to their customers and really meeting their needs with everything they ship. And we admire that and want to emulate that, for our customers as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you balance that on the team? So obviously you're building a platform, but how much of the roadmap is extend the card versus build the next surface area?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as far as like the fuel and fleet card is concerned, we always want to ensure it's the best in the market. And we have, I think we have a ton of what is the term I want to use? I think we're very ahead of like most of our competitors, in that area, but we don't want to rest on our laurels, if you will. We definitely want to make sure like it continues to be like the best in the market. And so we're always going to be focusing on that. Because again, as I said, that gives us the right to do everything else. And so we're focused on that right now. We're very much focused on like corporate spend as a whole. And then we're always going to spend between 20 to 30% of our focus on net new products. And so that's kind of how we're looking at the roadmap right now. But those new products, sometimes they're going to work, sometimes they're not going to work. So far, they've all worked, and we're super happy about it. But always in a way that's gonna, meet the need of our customers. It's not like we're not just like sitting down at Coast and imagining what could be the next product. Like we're always out there, talking to customers, whether it's on the phone, whether it's going to conferences, and we encourage everyone on the team to do that. To talk to customers, as often as possible to make sure that we're building things that resonate with them.
Yeah. One of the things I was looking at as well is like the first thing that came to mind when I was thinking about this space was that autonomous trucks and then the sort of electrification of trucks could potentially be a really big headwind. Then I looked into it, and actually it's a massive tailwind. That charging payments is even more fragmented than fuel cards. But most of these companies obviously are small businesses. And so the pace at which this electrification will happen, or autonomous shift will happen, is extremely slow. And it's unlikely to touch any of these spaces for decades. But I'm curious about how you guys think about it at the company and what the perspective is around some of these areas.
Yeah, I mean, those EVs and autonomous cars, especially for one specific brand, regardless of what people think about the person who leads that company, the products are just amazing. I think, I mean, I personally find them like fascinating. And I'm like a huge car guy. And so being fascinated with an EV that can drive itself is just like the opposite of what you would expect of someone who's into cars. But they've built something I think like fascinating, and that's proven to work like really well. In even like so well that it's scary, I think. But when it comes to fleets, and I could be totally wrong on this, right? When it comes to fleet, I think where we're gonna see autonomy being more deployed, at least at the beginning, is really like long haul, freight. I think, and that's a target. That's a market that now Coast is not necessarily like focused on. Like we're more focused on I want to say like intrastate, fleets, if you will, or maybe like cross states, but still like very, very local, not what's called like over the road trucking. It's not something that like we're focusing on right now, but I think this is the area that will be touched by autonomy, like the first and foremost. As far as EV is concerned, that's like definitely something that our customers are telling us about, that we're gonna be a need that we're gonna be addressing like very soon. It's a very interesting thing because you're watching the infrastructure, being better and better over time, and then you're trying to wonder at what time it's going to be the good opportunity to actually jump in and have like an offer for customers for this. And so that's why we're always like in the starting blocks on that. But I think we'll have like something in that front either in H2 of this year. I mean, the second part of the year, later part of the year, or early next. But at the end of the day, even if we want to, let's assume that if electricity is a form of fuel, right? So even if we want to make sure our fuel and fleet card remains the best in the market, this is not what makes cost like that interesting for our investors, for our customers, like long term. It's really like being able to support them with everything that is non-fuel related. What I see it is like, it's another way for us to make sure that the fuel and fleet card is ever comprehensive, for our customers. It's also so that we continue to have the right to serve them on the rest of their financial needs, if you will.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I see it right now. And as far as autonomy at the local level, I really, it's a big question mark. Like those fleets, as you mentioned earlier, economy is tough, and so like changing like your fleet to an EV was still very expensive.
Yeah.
And those tends to be the ones who have like the most autonomous capabilities. I'm not sure when that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Or if that's gonna happen at all, like at least in the 5 to 10 year horizon.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I see that. Potentially, it's like an additional tailwind because, like, from researching it, like it's a very understaffed industry, right? There's like, I think there's like 80 to 90,000. There's like a gap in the trucking industry of 80 to 90,000. And I don't know if I read this right, but I was reading that it was like a 90% churn rate or something crazy. With quite an old average, like a 46 average age for a driver. Like so you can kind of see how, if you could solve the gap in terms of available drivers, you're kind of expanding the amounts of trucks that are on the road, which ends up being a tailwind. And actually, there becomes this bigger need for having a better system for managing these fleets. So it feels like there's tailwinds in like lots of different directions for the product.
No, I think you're very right. Like you're making like a very fair point. Because everything is becoming like more expensive, expensive. Like our customers are telling us like, what are the ways you have to help us like save you more money? And so fuel is one way, and we have other ways to do that. But we're hearing that all the time. What's very interesting also is, and I don't know if it's an actual tailwind because I haven't looked at any of the data, right? But if you spend too much time on platforms like X and whatnot, you will read that very clearly. We should all just give up and get like a trades job.
Yeah.
Learn a trade and get a job in the trades, right? And so here I am, using tech and AI to build like products for the trades to help them become very successful businesses. And it's like, who knows? Maybe you're gonna have like plenty more people like flooding the space because they want to learn a trade and whatnot. Also, the last thing I'm seeing is that we're seeing is a very deep interest from organizations with large amounts of money to invest, rolling up those trade businesses into really large conglomerates, large organizations. That some of them are our customers, because they see a real because I think, and I could be wrong, but I think what those organizations are seeing is a space that has been not touched that much by tech.
Yeah.
And that are still very profitable businesses, but that could even be more profitable and operate even, in a much more efficient way with like more tech, with the way of operating that white collar companies, have, but all of that infused into the trades. And I've kind of seen that myself. So like when I left Spring, so I took a break for like 6 months, and with a friend of mine, we built like a small business because I always wanted to try that. And so we built like a mobile like pro detailing car business.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started using like a series of tools to like dispatch our mobile detailers, to interact with customers, to pay for stuff and whatnot. It's so easy to get started, but seeing what I see now with AI, I can see all of those tools have become like even better, if you will.
Yeah.
And so just taking the example of a tool calling on customers, right? Because you want to sell them something. Me personally, I've always been like very intimidated by selling directly like this, calling people and like selling. Those tools like make it like so much easier. And so you have all of those companies, including Coast, that are like helping those trade businesses like do better. And I think because of all those investments that those large, I think like venture funds are making into those roll-ups of trades businesses, I think we're going to see like more of that, and that's going to be a tailwind, for us. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's probably why I guess you've seen so much like significant revenue growth over the last 18 months. I was reading like 10x in the last 18 months. It's obviously it's a space that a lot of attention is now starting to move into, interestingly. I'd love to switch gears a little bit into culture, because you mentioned obviously it's Daniel's second company. He sold his last company, Bread, for like $500 million, I think, right?
Yeah, very successful exit.
And a very interesting space. I've always been fascinated by the buy now, pay later space. I guess from a culture perspective, like how do you describe Coast's culture, and what do you feel is different about working for someone like Daniel, who's already done it before and obviously done it very successfully before?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I always struggle a little bit answering the culture question, because I read something like a while ago from I don't know if you know him, like if you know I'm referring to like Jason Fried, co-founder of 37 Signals. I think it says something to the extent of culture is the last 50 days of how the company has been doing, how employees have been interacting with each other, and so on and so forth. So people from the Coast team that might hear my response like might totally disagree with me, but that's I'm gonna say what I want to say, I guess. First of all, it's a very kind group of people. It's startup, hyper growth startup is ruthless overall when it comes to execution, and yet despite the fact that Coast is ruthless about executing, it's a very kind group of people. And despite also being all of them like super smart, still very kind. And so I think that's the first thing I take away. The second is there's a good amount of solidarity that you can see that between engine product, and then product and marketing and sales, and support and customer success and whatnot. Everybody is always like jumping in, and I'm just blown away by the amount of product knowledge people on the support team and the customer success team have. Sometimes I'm not afraid to say like even more than we do, and so
that's good.
So yeah, it's and that that plays into the notion of like solidarity overall.
Yeah,
it's very much data driven overall. When it comes to decision making and resolving problems and coming up with solutions for our customers. What else could I say? What I've seen over the last 50 days. I think people are like demonstrate like very high agency. So for instance, as you know, because you guys are helping us, find more designers to join the team. So we're a little bit short on design right now, and I've seen PMs like take it upon themselves to leverage the design system, use AI prototyping tools to bring in PLD reviews, like features that are pretty much built without me really necessarily asking. And so that level of agency is not something that you can necessarily teach people. I think they have it or they don't.
Yeah.
And so I'm always like, fascinated to see that, and really pleased when I see that, from the team. And then I think the last thing is perhaps that goes back to the previous point I made on user experience. The team like demonstrate like a lot of cares for what our customers want, and a lot of empathy. It's always easy to when a customer is telling you, well, drivers are like lazy and dumb. to just like take it as is instead of actually talking to the drivers, right?
Yeah.
Or shipping like a ton of things because we want to go as fast as possible and then making it like not usable. That's a choice, like friction, and we kind of refuse that choice at Coast, to make that choice, I should say.
Yeah.
And so a lot of care for our customers in general, our users, and I guess like user experience overall. I'm not sure if I answer your question again, but this is what I've seen, at least over my past 50 days, and I'm very, very happy to be at Coast. And if folks like go on Glassdoor and look at the reviews, they'll see that like for the past 5 years, it's been 5 stars all around. And the tenure of folks at the company is actually very high. It's I think we're in like 4.5 average. I may be pushing it a little bit, but it's very high.
Yeah, that is pretty high. I think there is a lot to be said as well for like a second time founder who's been there and done it before, and they've like, I'm sure, made many mistakes, or every mistake that you can make and learn from it, and they understand how to kind of pivot and adapt into their next company, especially when it comes to people and talent and retaining them as well.
Yeah. So that's you're right. Like that's something I didn't touch on, and I'm sorry. When it comes to Daniel in particular, working with him. So the reason I came to Coast is, I think the first one was because I was just fascinated with the business, after Spring and all of the time in healthcare. Second reason, as I said, was like the team also is super smart, super talented. For Series B, it's the most talented team I had a chance to join. Not that like Series has anything to do with the team being talented, but you still like Daniel managed to keep all this talent together. And so I think that's a testament to his leadership overall. And then the third reason was actually Daniel. When I first met him, was talking like very fast, and so I thought I was like dealing with a tech bro, and then I started getting to know him through the interview process, and he's actually like not like that at all. Even one of my references who talked to Daniel was like, dude, like you need to are you sure like you want to work with Daniel because XYZ, and given what you told me you're looking for, and I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure. Like when you get, I know what you're saying about him right now, and that could be like the first perception you have of him when you first talk to him, but he's absolutely like not like that. So yes, does he talk super fast? Yes, but like the rest of the company is like a very kind person, is like super smart, is super knowledgeable about the fintech space, and he's like an actual like product person. Like he used to be an engineer himself. And so that makes him, of course, like very technical and very dangerous, sometimes in good ways, sometimes in less good ways. But it's I think it's just delightful to work with him on coming up with solutions for solving like customer problems.
Yeah.
And he has like zero ego. Like despite the exit that he has had, despite like the fact that now he's brought Coast to where his previous company was and beyond in terms of revenue and success, zero ego. And he's not the kind of guy who's going to shove it in your face like, I already had an exit, bro. Like, what are you telling me?
Yeah.
I've never heard that from him.
Yeah.
And I never feel like when I work with him, I interact with him, that I need to have some kind of reverence because he's already, had like a very successful exit. And that's the same of anyone else on the C-suite or in leadership or ELT. A very low ego overall.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, you mentioned empathy a few times. Like, I think that ultimately comes from the top, right? In terms of like deep empathy for the customer, but also for your like fellow teams within the company as well. So I think that often speaks more to the type of leader running the business more than anything else. What about design? So I'd love to hear a little bit about like what great design looks like at Coast, how you think about design, and like what kind of designer actually wouldn't be a fit at Coast.
As perhaps like the audience will infer from my background, I have zero design actual like proper like background, right? And so sometimes but I think I've had the privilege to be, or the chance, the opportunity to actually lead design teams a few times. Coast is the fourth design team that I'm building right now, and I hope it's as good or even better than the one I built at Spring Health, because the folks at Spring Health are like super talented, and I'm very lucky to have had a chance to work with them. But with Tanner on the team, like we're starting from a great base also. Like Tanner is like super talented and super dedicated to making the business successful and our customers also very successful. But going back to your point, so when I answer that question, I don't necessarily always answer it. I think like the way someone from with a pure design background will answer it, because sometimes I just lack the vocabulary. It's funny because my partner is a designer.
Oh, really?
And so, yeah, she is, yeah. And so sometimes I go to her, I say like, hey, this is what I want out of my designers. Like, help me like explain in a way that they will understand. And so she's super helpful in getting me there. But I'm going to take a try. So I think like design overall at Coast is, I think it's a lever for like three things. I would say the first one is a lever for business growth. And I would say this of design of any organization, like design, like product management, like engineering, when we're talking about R&D. I think they're all those three functions have one and the same responsibility, which is to create value as fast as possible and to do whatever it takes to put it in the hands of our customers, right? And so designers, that's a lever for business growth, right? So like I would like design to be seen at Coast as a lever to attract customers, to retain customers, and to grow customers, and to make those customers themselves very successful in their own like businesses on their own side, right?
Yeah.
So it's a kind of a two-sided responsibility when it comes to business. In my previous like really design leadership roles and product leadership roles, I've always put a lot of accent of that, which has made my teams very, very, very business oriented, and sometimes at the detriment of other things that now are like more top of mind for me. So the second lever is craft. So despite all of this, the designers are creatives that I think I expect them and I want to do everything I can to support them in really expressing their craft in the best way possible, such that like even the tiniest detail are like thought over or like thought over, if you will. And so I guess the best way to put it is I see design as a lever for craft. Of course, for the designers, first and foremost, but also like for folks around them when it comes to PMs and engineers, for instance, I love when PMs are like pushing designers to be better. I love it the other way around also. When a PM and a designer are working together on framing a problem, I really encourage the designers like to push to make sure that like we're focusing on the right problem. And same with engineering, right? And so a lever for craft, I guess that's the second thing. And then the third thing for Coast is, so you're having business impact, you're sweating the details, while you still have to find a way to delight customers in the end, right? Mm-hmm. And so you can still like even like a utility, you could assume that Coast in some ways is a utility to our customers, can like have a soul, right? If you're looking at an app, for instance, like the Not Boring Weather app, it's fascinating how much soul there is in that product. Will we ever get to that point at Coast? I don't know. It's a good thing to strive for, I think. But I definitely want our products to have a soul and to end up delighting our customers, because even if for our customers it might be a perception thing, so it's fine. Like it's just what it is. Like a better design product and a product that looks better is just people think it's better. That's just what it is. That's not why I'm doing it personally. Yeah. That's not why I would push my design teams to do it. But that's how it resonates with customers, I think. And if we can surprise them and meet their needs in a delightful ways, like we're always going to try to do that. So that's kind of design at folks. Design at Coast. When it comes to, I think like being a successful designer at Coast, I think I would say like most of it has little to do with design actually, and more like about the kind of professionals I think like would thrive at the company, which is showing high agency. If you see like there's like a customer problem that you can solve, like go ahead and like solve it. I think that's one thing. The second thing is again like having always this in the back of your mind, I should say, that like the design is a lever for attracting, retaining, and like growing customers, right? If I reflect on my experience at Spring, I think by the time we reach $1 billion valuation, you could make the argument that Spring could have done that without any designers, and you could make the argument that like Coast could perhaps not as successful as you want it to be, but could still be like successful without designers. And so if design doesn't have impact on business, I think it has no reason to exist in an organization such as Coast and Spring and so on and so forth, right? And I don't know if that's going to resonate well with your audience, but that's how I feel about it. So yeah, having impact on the agency, having impact on the business, system thinking. Why? Because we started with this wedge product and now we're expanding into non-fuel. There's like so many different systems and that we have to integrate with, deal with, that our customers are using. And also there's this permanent, tension between building something very simple for drivers, but also very powerful for people in the back office. And so having the ability to think in system, I think is gonna make someone like super successful at Coast. And then just really like a strong desire wanting to collaborate with product managers, engineers, people on the sales team, people on the customer success team. The reason I say that is because, and I think for the most part, like those designers are not like far and few between, but I could be wrong. If someone expects to get like a bunch of specs and like a solution from like a PM and do design around that, I don't think they would get that at Coast. And so I don't think they would necessarily like enjoy like the experience working at Coast. I really want designers to be all the way up, starting at even like collaborating on strategy with the PMs. But certainly when it comes to framing problems and like shaping solutions, and then like working side by side with engineers to actually build the thing. Because I'm also like, I don't want designers to just hand off something to engineering. Because then when it comes to all in all like quality, actually like front end quality, what I tend to see is if you just hand off things as opposed to building things together, you see more and more like a greater gap between what's in Figma, for instance, and what you actually see in the front end. And when you have designers and engineers working side by side, I think the level of quality is otherwise greater.
Well, I think the other part to that is like the opportunity to work close together has like come together a lot more over the last couple of years. There's a bigger blurring line between all these areas. I guess maybe as a final question for you, you mentioned obviously you've been fortunate to oversee both product and design in a few different roles. You're in that position today. I think that gives you like an interesting vantage point around like these blurring lines between product and design, and to a degree engineering as well. How are you thinking about that in terms of the team, how they work together, and also the people that you're hiring as well?
Yeah. So I don't think I'm gonna say anything that's like revolutionary, especially given what has happened with AI over the last 6 to 12 months. But the line is, to your point, like is getting very, very blurry between all of those different functions. And what we're tending towards on all fronts is having groups of people that are just full stack builders, right?
Yeah.
So PM will have different sensibilities than like a designer and then an engineer and whatnot. But like eventually, like we're gonna get to that point, and that's what we're striving towards, at Coast. I think like the way the team operates today, it will most likely be vastly different 3 months from now, and then 6 months from now. And all for the good of our customers, I think. And I want to say, as like a former PM myself, I think it's a kind of an amazing opportunity to be able like to just build stuff without really needing to wait on a designer or wait on an engineer. I think it's a wonderful opportunity overall. So what it means for people like me is I think I see myself as being responsible for setting up the team for success in terms of having like the greatest product sense as possible. Because even if you have all of those wonderful AI tools, like it doesn't take away someone's judgment, at least not yet.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to product judgment or just critical thinking, let's just call it like judgment / product sense overall, like that. What can I do to actually ensure the team has the greatest, product sense of anyone at Coast, I should say, and anyone in this business, in fact. So that I think that's my first responsibility. The second thing is creativity. I think also like AI doesn't replaces one's creativity. If anything, it enhances it. But still, like how do you set up an environment such that like people are not outsourcing their creativity to a tool, if you will, who could end up, put you in a position where you're just producing the exact same thing that another competitor is doing, and that's not going to move the needle at all in the marketplace. And then the last thing is quality. So you've again, like you have all of those wonderful tools, right? And perhaps let's take the design system. Like, how can you set this up in such a way that, like, even if everybody is building, the quality of the product keeps being the same or keeps increasing as opposed to going down, and that is the I think the downside of those tools that can enable anyone to do pretty much anything is, well, if you don't have an idea of what good looks like in the first place, how are you going to make sure that you're going to leverage those tools like in the right way? And so we definitely don't want to see that, because it's funny because one of my PMs was telling me, like, one of the things that I love at Coast is how smart everyone is. And for instance, when people are writing memos, strategic memos, like the level of care and craft that's put into the actual writing. And she was pleading with me that I really don't want this to go away.
Yeah.
And because the leadership team is making a strong push to make sure we increase AI fluency across the board at the company, like that, we make this one of the values or one of the guiding principles into making sure that quality doesn't go down, despite the fact that we're going to be using AI even more in how we operate and run the business, and even like ship the features that we ship, if you will.